This meeting is being recorded.
Boom. So let's do this. Let's share our screen real quick so we can act like it's fresh. Boom. 3, 2. Peace, everybody. Welcome. Thank y'all for coming. Tonight is our first episode series. Don't know what we quite gonna call it, but we have created this new thing called a jewel session. So my whole reason for doing this tonight is to teach and enlighten people of different folks that you're gonna need on your team when it comes to your music or creative career in this here musical entertainment industry. So I'm so excited to introduce and let her brag and introduce herself, the amazing attorney Somara Jacques, also known as the Latte lawyer. Give it up, everybody. Put something in the chat. Give us some claps. Give us some hoops. Give us some hollers, because she about to change your life. Miss Somara, please let everybody know who you are, what you do, and why you are so amazing and why they need to know you.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on this webinar, being the inaugural guest. Jay herself, she's always going to downplay. She's an amazing music professional, manager, just all around great person. So I can't say enough good things about her. But as for me, I am an entertainment attorney. I have been an entertainment attorney for a very long time now, and I've experienced work with both independent labels, the majors, so Sony, Warner, Universal, always working on the artist side, so I understand the struggles that you go through as far as that's concerned. And my big thing is trying to teach artists the things that I know. My goal is to retire in 2 more years, so I'm sort of on a fire sale to make sure that you understand as much as possible, and that when you do find an attorney, whether that's me in the next 2 years or any other attorney, you're able to work optimally with them because you understand what's needed from you. I think a lot of reasons people don't like working with lawyers is because they don't understand how it should work. And then it causes some animosity. So we're just trying to clear that up today. And like I said, I really appreciate Jay giving us this platform to do it, because I don't have options often to kind of do this kind of work and explain, what we do on our side. So yeah, that's it. That's me.
Sweet. So we got a lot of folks in here tonight. So I want to do a quick roll call for maybe like 2 minutes right now. Listen, I know y'all artists. I know how y'all get. When I say quick, I mean quick, right? Name, where you from, what you do, right? So do me a favor, if you want to introduce yourself and come on camera, raise your hand. We'll pick you. We'll pull you up. Quick, y'all. Like, I don't need to know your whole bio. I don't need to know your last name. I don't need to know none of all that extra stuff. If you don't want to come on camera, feel free. Again, if you haven't put yourself in the chat, put your information again, who you are, where you're from, what you do. You never know who's going to be in these rooms. I have seen some amazing synergies happen from just people in this chat. So trust me, drop your information, brag about yourself, let people know what you got going on. You got a project X, Y, and Z. This is the time to let people know what y'all got. Y'all quiet tonight. Don't nobody want to introduce themselves by the end
Is
of
it because there's a lawyer? Sometimes that makes people quiet. It happens sometimes. I promise I'm not scary. Not today, anyway.
When it comes to this money, all right, we got a few hands. Let's go with Dre. Come on if you want. Dre Diamond.
Hey, it's me. My name is Dre Diamond. I go by like many different names. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I am an R&B and hip hop artist. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Let's go with Latavia. Feel free to jump on.
Hello, I'm Latavia. Yep. So I'm originally from Miami, residing in Atlanta, and I'm actually an aspiring entertainment lawyer. So I'm here to get both sides tonight.
Yes, I love it. Okay. Nice to
meet you. Linda Starr.
Hi everyone, my name is Linda Starr. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I'm a vocalist, songwriter, and sound designer for podcasts. So if you guys need any vocal referencing, BGVs, just hit me. I'll put my info in the chat.
Nice. Afro Fairy, going on and let us know about yourself.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Afro Fairy. I am a vocalist, writer, and all-around creative. And it's really cool to be here. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Mr. Robbie, tell us about yourself.
Yes, my name is Robbie. I am a recording artist, producer, songwriter, sync license artist, and I'm from Richmond, Virginia.
Sweet. Miss Tyra White.
You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. What's up? My name is Tyra White. My artist name is Tyra White Beats, and I'm a music producer from New Orleans, Louisiana. And I also got to represent Las Vegas 702 as well.
I like it. I like it.
All right.
Anybody else before we get the jewel dropping? Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right.
I'm DC Carson. I'm from Alabama, music producer. I've talked to Somara. She's awesome. So let's get into it. Thank you for having this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else? Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right, bet we back partying in the chat. So let's do it. Real quick myself, because I always forget at the end that I didn't even introduce myself. I'm sorry. I am Jay Yoko. I am the founder of Jay Yoko Entertainment. We do a plethora of things when it comes to assistant artists and creatives, specifically when it comes to artist development, administrative rights, royalties, copyright management, pretty much everything that involves money, right? So understanding your royalties, understanding contracts, learning the jargon, learning the industry, if you would. My job is to pretty much educate you, guide you, and help you to accomplish your goals by creating strategic solutions to help you get to wherever you're trying to be. So again, my reason for doing this, and I work in the music industry. I consult with different artists, labels, pretty much 24/7. This is all that I'm doing, and I'm just seeing not only the positions that people need to know to add to their team. They don't know what they are. They don't know the importance of it. So my whole thing is like, look, I'm gonna make a series every month. I'm gonna bring on a different subject matter expert and let them kind of explain this is what you need, X, Y, and Z. I wanted to start off with an entertainment attorney first and foremost, because I don't know if you guys are paying attention to these trends and what's going on in the industry right now, but the music industry is in shambles, right? And it's a lot of loopholes, it's a lot of bills, and it's a lot of people who I want to get signed, I want to do this, and it's like people don't really know what they're signing up for when they sign these things. So I decided I wanted to bring an entertainment attorney on, not only so we can talk about some different instances of situations where you may need a lawyer, how to work with a lawyer, some situations where some people did not have a lawyer and everything went wrong, and then also give you guys an opportunity just to ask some questions about her expertise, how to work with her when you might need a lawyer. I've realized that a lot of people don't have these opportunities to ask these questions because that's how we learn. We ask questions. So this is why we're here tonight, to learn and figure out what is the importance of an entertainment attorney, what is an entertainment attorney, and how do they help in the music industry. So I'm going to pass it over to the person who actually has a degree for this and has the expertise for this. I will guide you through the combo if you will allow me, if you would. So first thing first, what is an entertainment attorney?
That is a great question. So an entertainment attorney is a hybrid between a business attorney and an intellectual property attorney. That's the best way to describe us. What we do is we help artists on the business side of things, but your business is your music and your art. So we have to protect your intellectual property, right? So we go from employment issues to mostly contract negotiations, which can be real easy or real messy, depending on who you're working with. And I know Jay knows this on both sides because she also worked at a law firm before, so she's very familiar. We deal with, I do transactional work, so I don't actually go to court for anyone anymore. I do handle trademarks as well, so I do that as far as handling trademark litigation, but it's just basically making sure that your business is in order, so hopefully you can have a very streamlined process to be profitable. That's what we're here for. We want to make sure to avoid loopholes and pitfalls, and hopefully if you listen to us, you won't have that many issues. There are people that have lawyers. I'm going to use Kanye as an example, who's currently being sued by Donna Summer's estate for that reason. And when you end up having unnecessary litigation, it's going to tie up your music, it's going to tie up your money, and that's not what we're trying to do here. Everybody on your team wants to make sure that you get monetized as quickly as possible, and we act as sort of the insurance people to make sure that things are done correctly and you know what you're getting into, so you're not surprised. That's what an entertainment lawyer does, if that answers it.
Short version for those who are my 15-second folks, right? An entertainment attorney is going to protect your IP. So your IP can be your music, it can be your content, it can be your videos. That is your gatekeeper, if you would, to make sure that people are not using and or abusing your art without you knowing, without you being compensated. She is the person that is pretty much making sure that legally everything that happens with your art is either supposed to or not supposed to. When you get to that situation where somebody is doing wrong, like Kanye's using Donna Summers without her permission, this is why you have an attorney, pretty much. She's like our lookout. That is definitely, that's what she is. She is your intellectual property security guard, pretty much. She makes sure that nobody can use your stuff without your permission, as a smaller version, if you would. So we got a couple of topics that we want to cover tonight, and I'm gonna just run through them real quick so you guys can get an idea of where we're going with this. So I personally like to teach from real life experience, especially things that's in the headlines, especially things that's going on. So we're going to go over a couple of those scenarios and situations that have happened before. We're also going to go over the reasons why you might need an attorney in different situations in which that happened, and information on how to actually prepare to work with an attorney, because a lot of people don't exactly know how that whole situation and transaction works, if you would. So, and I think that is also a reason why some people don't get attorneys, get nervous about it, because they don't really know how that side works either. So let's start from the beginning. Attorney Jacques, with everything going on in the headlines with horror stories that you may have dealt with, that you've heard about, what are some scenarios that you felt or you've seen where people for sure needed an entertainment attorney?
I would say on the possibility of clearance, that's probably where you need an attorney. So before you hit the studio, that's the best time to have an attorney, before you make your music. So making sure that if you have a sample, it's cleared correctly, making sure that you already discussed deal points, things that you don't want to talk about normally with your collaborators because you just want to make music. Make sure that you have your deal points set up. Deal points, if you don't know, does anyone know what that is? Or anybody have a clue? Okay. Before you actually create a contract, you can send an email to your collaborators. Most of the time, that's going to be to your producer if you're a singer-songwriter, or if you're a producer, it would be to the artist that you're working with. And it talks about the main points that are going to be in your two main agreements. That's going to be your sound recording agreement, which can also be called a producer agreement or featured artist agreement. It has many different names, and then your split sheet. So before you actually sign and you go into the studio, you say, okay, this is going to be for the split sheet side, the publishing, as people like to call it. This is going to be the writer's share. This is going to be the publisher's share. And this is going to be our information. Do we agree? If everyone agrees, then you can actually give them the paperwork and they can sign it. Easy. The second side will be the sound recording side. So you're going to say, is this going to be ownership is the first thing you want to worry about. Is this going to be a work for hire or a collaboration agreement? If it's a work for hire, that means that you are usually paying the producer for this beat. You want to have full ownership. You don't want them to tell you what they can do with your music, how they can use your music, keep you from licensing your music. You own everything. That would be a work for hire. If it's a collaboration agreement, which a lot of people like to say it's a collaboration, but they don't want to actually act like it's a collaboration. So the producer will be like, you're going to pay me $5,000 and I'm going to own 50% of this record. How does that make sense? So that should be a work for hire. If the producer is also putting in money for marketing, for the video, you're splitting the cost like straight down the middle, then that would be a collaboration agreement and you would both co-own. Then you would talk about the points. So points are percentages on the record. I know I'm going kind of fast. I'm trying to give you everything at once, but that gives you points on the sound recording. That tells you like if you're going to give the producer 3% of all the net revenue that you make. So if you get money from the distributor, you're going to give them 3% of what you've made from that, or 5%, or 1%, whatever that's going to be. And you're going to agree to that in the email before you actually get your sound recording agreement. And then you're going to decide whether you're going to do a letter of direction or not. A letter of direction decides if you, from Sound Exchange, how much you're going to be giving that producer. So once you get all of the points set up, then you're going to send them a fuller agreement, either short form or long form. They're going to sign it. Then you can go ahead and move forward with your music. You can create it. The last thing that you'd want to do also is make sure if there's samples that you put that either they cleared the sample in the contract or that they don't have any samples in the contract. This is important because if they breach that, let's say they lied and there was a sample and you get sued, now you can go back to the producer and be like, hey, you breached our agreement. Now I'm going to recover whatever I got sued for from you. So that's an important point to put in there. So that's why you want to start with deal points when you're dealing with your collaborators. And if Kanye had probably done that, he wouldn't have as many issues. And I know everyone thinks, I read the comments and people think it's cool, it's fine, like he has money. But it's going to cost him a lot more to clear it now, and he may actually lose rights to the recording because he's done it this way. So just be preemptive and talk with everyone and have deal points done ahead of time.
Try to catch everybody. Okay, here's some keywords that you probably may have heard and don't know them, but that's cool. So let's say in a situation where, because it's happening and it's really bad, what happens if somebody claims your royalties?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up.
They're claiming your royalties, especially when it comes to some of these like legacy artists who like are not here and they have estates and stuff like that. How does that work, and how do they get their royalties back?
Okay, good point. So Jay and I, we talked about this before we got onto this live. It was a whole Billboard article about this, about a lot of Latin artists were not actually getting their royalties because other people were claiming it. These people ended up going to jail for this. But what you can do is actually go and look, like on the MLC, you can see who's trying to like claim your work. It'll say who has ownership rights. If you see that that's your song and someone else is claiming it, you need to immediately send an email to the MLC to let them know that somebody's claiming royalties that don't belong to them. Same thing with Sound Exchange, same thing with ASCAP. They'll usually pause the royalties and they'll make an investigation and they'll go ahead and make sure that it's corrected. You will have to show proof of ownership though, and that's where the copyright registrations come in, and that's where that sound recording agreement that we talked about and the split sheet agreement come in, because you can't just say, oh, that's my music. You have to prove that that's your music, right? So that's what you'd have to do. It is a lot of emailing back and forth, and as far as getting your money back, that's a little tricky. If your music was claimed by somebody else because you didn't claim it first, remember there's a black box, right? So depending on if it's ASCAP or BMI or Sound Exchange, they only collect up to a certain point. It's usually between 3 to 5 years, depending on what place that you're looking at. So you may actually have lost out on those royalties, and you may have to actually try to get a lawsuit to get it back. So that's why it's really important that whenever you're putting out your music, immediately make sure to go to Sound Exchange and claim it with your ISRC code for Sound Exchange, which is basically the barcode for your music for your sound recording, and make sure to claim it with your PRO as soon as possible. And if you don't have a pub admin, which is company that will be able to go ahead and check on your publishing splits and publishing royalties, then make sure to go on the MLC. They have a whole repertoire search that you can do, and you can make sure that you can claim it there as well. So if you make sure to claim every time you release a song, this shouldn't be a problem for you. And if it has happened to you, immediately notify them. It's like contacting your credit card, right? If somebody's using your credit card without your permission, you immediately call them, right? And to stop it, it's the same thing with ASCAP, BMI, if you use GMR, any of those places. So just immediately contact them and do it by email, don't do it by phone. You need to make sure that you have a paper record. That's super important if you want to go ahead and have litigation later, or if you want to prove that it was taken from you. Okay?
Nice. So we got one question in the chat. I'm gonna go down and then we'll get to the next one. How do you decide points before the song is created? Like, what if the other players end up on the track during the process?
That's a great question. So usually what people do is they go by label standards. I don't always think that going by label standards is the best, but if you're dealing with producers, especially, and you're giving out points on a record, you usually give between 1 to 3 for someone that's a new producer. So they don't have that many tracks out. Let's say maybe 1 or 2 or 2 or 3. So you give them 1 to 3. And then if you have somebody that's more of a mid-level producer, somebody who's maybe made a hit or 2, we're looking at 3 to 5. And if you have like a legacy producer, let's say like a Metro Boomin, right? Then it would be 5%. And at that point, they usually have their own version of like an imprint, or you may give them a higher fee, but I wouldn't go past 5 if you can. If it's a collaboration agreement, which is different from a work for hire, then you can go ahead and split it, 50-50 or 25-25, but wait until you have everybody that you want on the record before you send out the deal points if you can. And if you didn't, make sure that when you add new people on, that you give yourself room to give them points. Like, don't give your first producer 90%, right, or 90 points, and then you have no money left to give to the other producers. So if you know that you're going to maybe bring on more people, I would start between 1 to 3 for each producer that you have, and then just keep on adding until you add maybe your 3 or 4 producers or 3 or 4 artists that you know you're going to bring on. Don't give them too high of points, because then you won't have anything to work with.
So even just to piggyback off that, the point system also depends on like what genre of music you're in. So
Sure.
there are different breakdowns. I work heavily on the urban side, and the typical rule is the producer gets 3 points.
Yeah.
Depending on your producer agreement, that 3 points might be split amongst all the producers, depending on how big they are. It might be 3 apiece. This is also why having these different agreements in place and also having these conversations like while you're creating the record and while you guys are in the studio is important, because a lot of times like these issues can be solved with just having a conversation, but nobody wants to have that conversation because we're in the studio and we're vibing and it's not cool to talk about business right now, and then that's when all hell breaks loose once the records are out for real. So I always advise people like have these conversations ahead of time. When you start working with the producer, ask him like, okay, what are we doing, so you can go into this inception of making this record kind of knowing where your numbers are at ahead of time. And as you're adding people, you should also be doing a little bit of math and figuring out, okay, so if I add this person and he do that, this person got to get this. So make sure that it makes sense for not only you as a creator to make sure that you can get what you want out of it, but make sure that whatever you're doing is equitable for everybody. Because if you got people working on this record, make sure they get whatever they're supposed to get and don't mess them.
If I can add on though with the word equitable, because that causes a lot of problems and fights too. A lot of people feel that their percentage should be higher than others because they feel like they're more talented than the other people who are on the record. So using the word equitable can be dicey. Like the word fair causes me to break out in hives every time I hear it. So just make sure that when you're dealing with anybody else, you talk about the points, you talk about what you can give, and if you say like this is the budget that you have for points because you're working with other people, they're usually willing to work with you. So let's say for instance that you know that you can give them 3, but they're like, I expect more. Just be like, what, we can only give you 1. And they're like, oh, well, I want 10. And you're like, well, I have other producers on here. The most I can give you is 3. Will that work? And usually saying it that way, you're giving them what you already originally intended, but they feel like they've gotten one over on you because they end up with the 3 points you were going to give them in the first place. So use a lot of human psychology when you're dealing with negotiations, and you're dealing with big egos. So also just work on that too. Like I have to be nice with some people, and sometimes I have to be like, hey, I have to, lay my foot down with others, because you have to know who you're talking to sometimes. Just to add on.
That is definitely true. I think it was a book called Verbal Judo, The Art of Persuasion. And that was one of the best books that I ever read, because it teaches you, just like she says, how to play on people's psyche. How when somebody's already mad, just talk quieter so you can get them to like calm down and listen to you. And also when to know when to be assertive and not be like a pushover. But yeah, this is business. And business, when it comes to negotiation, means that you have to deal with different energies and attitudes. So knowing how to negotiate around them are just important as knowing how to do a split sheet. You feel me? It's a balance. Miss Linda says she's a bit confused. Is the point system for WAFH, which in my brain right now says work from home, so I'm not exactly sure what that's
work for hire. Okay, I understand why she's confused. Okay, so remember, let's start really simply. Does everyone know that how many copyrights are on one song? Who knows? Because this will make it easy. Jay, don't tell them.
My bad. I'm gonna get a diagram for him though. That's gonna help.
Okay, but does everyone know? Anybody know? Put in the chat, or if maybe you can. I don't know. I think everyone's on mute, but
2.
Thank you. How do you say your name?
Benaya.
Benaya. Perfect. There's 2. So there's 2 copyrights to each song that you make. One is what we call, what you can see is the written part of the song. That's the musical composition. When you collect on what we call publishing, that's what that is. It's the writer's share and the publisher's share. When we talk about percentages, which is the amount of money that you're going to be getting in royalties on that side, we usually call it splits or percentages. It really doesn't matter one way or the other. Perfect. If you are dealing with a recording, then the recording, what we say is percentages on the recording. So the percentage of money that you're getting from what the recording makes, that's called points. So whenever we're talking about points, we're referring to the recording. And then whenever we're talking about splits, we're referring to the composition. Does that make sense? I don't see her in the chat, so I'm not sure if it resonated with her, but I wanted to be clear what that is. So the composition, awesome. The splits, amazing. The splits are on the written side of the music, because when you used to actually write music down with like paper with notes and lyrics, that's what that covers. That's why it's called publishing, right? Because it's printed. And then the other side is the recording, because that's a record, what you hear. So if you think of it visually, it becomes easier. So points are on the record, splits are on the publishing side, the composition.
Perfect. All right.
I hope that wasn't too long, unlike the other explanation for being an attorney. So I hope I kept 15 seconds rule.
15 seconds don't work in the music industry. We need full.
I know, but because there's so many nuances. So I'll tell somebody like this is it, but then I was like, but then there was a picture of a glacier, and it's like this is the explanation of the law, and this is the law, and these are the exceptions. So there's so many exceptions. I want to like walk you through it. So that's the basics though for points and splits.
Not the diagram definitely help. Okay, so we'll add that into the recap tomorrow. We'll send out that. So hopefully that'll help. All right, so another, I guess, situation where you might need an attorney. Say, for instance, you get a verse from a major artist, all right? And you pay for this feature, right? And then this feature artist said, well, you didn't pay me fully, you didn't clear it, and they take this feature and go give it to somebody else. What do you do?
In this scenario, there's a contract between the artist and the label artist, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then you'd have to go ahead and file a lawsuit for breach, because you did pay, right? And they did the verse. However, if you paid them, but you didn't pay them fully, then that means that you breached the agreement. A breach means that you violated the promises that you made in your contract. That's the easiest way to describe it. So if you didn't do your end, that person can actually consider that agreement, your contract, is terminated, it's invalid. And then you have to prove that in court. But if you did everything you were supposed to do, you paid them, and they use that verse with somebody else, that's when you go after them in court, right? Or you can also say, let's say you don't have enough money to go the court route, or you don't have a free attorney to help you, there's something called the DMCA, which is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. You can take that contract that you have and go to a DMCA custodian. That's the person that handles the copyright issues for all of the platforms. There's one for Instagram, there's one for TikTok. If you look up DMCA custodian and then you put whatever you're looking for YouTube, it'll give you an email. You email the person and say, hey, this song has my verse on it that I paid for with this artist. You need to take it down. Once something is taken down, people take you seriously. So then now he's willing to come back to the table and talk to you. So that's usually the first way that I deal with things without even having to go through a lawsuit in the first place. The other thing that you have to mention is if that person is a featured artist that you use, a lot of times people will just take the verse, they won't have a contract, or they have a contract, but they won't get a label clearance. If that person's signed to a label, it doesn't mean anything if you haven't cleared it with the label. So you can have an agreement with them, and then you paid them, and you did everything you were supposed to do, but you didn't clear it with the label, and now you're out $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for a verse. So make sure that person is signed to a label, and if they are signed to a label, get a clearance, and make sure you have an agreement with them, and keep track of the money they give you. Don't let them pay you in cash. This is why. If they pay you in cash, it's really hard to prove that they paid you the exact amount they were supposed to, or vice versa, or that you paid them the exact amount that you were supposed to. And then they can say, well, they never paid me the full amount. I only got $10,000 and it says $15,000. How are you going to prove that?
And it happens, folks. And that's the reason why I asked this question, because I've been in this scenario. Literally, I think maybe a year or two ago, I had a client who, we all have clients that don't listen to us sometimes. Let's just put it like that, right? So, client wants to get this feature from this major artist. I say no, because I just don't feel like spending $50,000 is worth it for a verse, right? This is only the verse, and this is off of some homie love stuff, right? So I say, listen, if we're gonna do it, let's do a contract, let's get an invoice, and let's make sure we get the label clearance. We don't do any of that because client doesn't like to listen to Jay, right? Client pays $50,000 over about a month in cash. Never does the label clearance. So $50,000 later, this verse now sits on a hard drive that nobody else outside of our little crew has ever heard before. Why? Because once he got this feature, this artist got even bigger. And then after not listening to Jay for a little bit, Jay gonna walk away, right? Because I'm not just gonna keep giving out blowing air. The label didn't clear it. They didn't understand how to clear it with the label. There was no paper trail of money even being exchanged. So the label said, what feature? $50,000 later, and a record that's sitting on a hard drive. Please let me advise you all that if you're going to work with major artists, you have to get all of the paperwork done, the clearances, the invoices, the feature or side artist agreements, and make sure that you are following through to make sure that you are covering yourself, because unfortunately, it's going to sound sad, they don't care about what the outcome is going to be for you. To them, they're going to get in the booth, they're going to knock it out, they're going to send it to you, that's in the check. They're not going to promote it. So also understand that that verse only includes that verse. That's not promo, that's not putting it in their story, that's not a music video, that's not none of that. That is the verse and the verse only. So if you want to get extra things, it has to be included in that contract, and you have to be prepared to pay for it. You want them to get on IG Live with you to listen and play the song, you got to pay them for it. That's promo. You want them to post it and send it out to their people, that's marketing. You got to pay them for it. So this is why I try to tell people, like, listen, unless you got the bread for it and it really makes sense, don't even do these major deals with these features with these major artists, because you can be taking that money and putting so much more into yourself. These major artists and getting features with them is never a guarantee that it's going to convert to you. That's just the fact that you got a major artist on there. But if they're not marketing it, they're not promoting it, they're not putting it behind it, you just got a feature with a major artist and we still don't know who you are, what you got going on. It's just not worth it to me in my eyes. So that's our tidbit about working with different artists. But as you see in all these scenarios, a lot of things can be kind of sewn up and or mitigated if you have the proper contracts, agreements, paper trails, and documentation. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you need an attorney on your side like white on rice, right? So if we talking about,
I had a mic. That was like mic drop moment. I like that.
now that we're talking about needing an attorney, what are the steps, if you would? Like, what specific scenarios do you feel like artists need to come to you for your services? And like, what type of plan should they have? Like, how do they start?
To go ahead and contact an attorney, the best way to start, at least on our end, is we usually have people fill out a form to tell us exactly what they're looking for. I've had people, especially producers, who were reached out to by one of the majors being like, hey, I really need an attorney by DM. And so I've maybe sent like them that same form immediately, like fill this out so we can go ahead and get you scheduled for a call. Once we know how much your budget is, what the issue is, and what you're looking to do, then we can talk about how to get you retained. Or if I can't take on, your case, because let's say your budget is $500, unfortunately, and I charge $250 an hour, and you need a whole negotiation done for a producer agreement that's going to take 5 hours. That's not going to fly. We can't make that work for us. So I would refer you to another attorney, and there are free legal services out there. I actually did on Reels a whole series for 50 states plus the District of DC, free legal services for every artist. But if you're going to do that, make sure to like sign up for that now. The wait can be months for those types of services. So before you need an attorney, reach out to an attorney is the best thing that I could say to you. Just ask for a consultation. Consultations can cost anywhere. My consultations for 30 minutes are $50. I do that on purpose. I do that so it's easy for an artist to contact me and actually ask me questions so they can plan out what they need to do. Because sometimes you just need a plan. You don't necessarily need the attorney to like do everything for you. So speak to an attorney first before you need the attorney. Have an idea of what you're going to be doing. Have a project, right? If you're going to be releasing an EP, know how many singles you're going to have. Know if there's going to be any samples. And if there are any samples, If it's a major label sample, be realistic about your budget. Don't think that a major label is going to give you, I mean, I hate to have tough love here, but don't think that a major label is going to give you a sample for like $500. No. You're looking at least 10,000, and that's if they're being nice and they feel like it's charity day, okay? So you just want to make sure that you clear things ahead of time. Be smart about your samples. If you can, just use the publishing side, like what we talked about with musical compositions. Interpolate it. Have somebody replay the song on an instrument. That'll save you money. Then you're paying for half of what you would pay instead of paying for the sound recording and for the composition. So when you're speaking with an attorney, have some things listed down. I know some people get nervous when they have to ask questions. So maybe write down a couple of the questions that you have for attorneys ahead of time. I do the same thing when I have to speak to my accountant. She makes me very nervous. So I always have a list of things that I talk to her about before I talk to her. Okay, so do the same thing when you're speaking with someone, and don't be afraid to ask questions. At the end of the day, if I end up working for you, I'm working for you. I may know some more than you do about the law, but we're trying to get to the same place of what you want to have happen with your song, and we try to do it within the rules. Okay, so don't be afraid to speak with your attorney. We're just people who happen to practice law. Some of us aren't nice. I'll say it. Some of us are assholes, but we still will at least know whether we're going to be able to work with you or not. And if that person's not somebody that you like, move on to another attorney. There are plenty of, okay?
Love it. I love it. Do you offer contingency agreements, and can
No.
you? I ain't mad at you.
Sorry.
But
No.
as an entertainment attorney, can you explain what a contingency agreement is in a situation where maybe they're getting like a label deal or a publishing situation that might be able to benefit them?
Absolutely. Okay, so a contingency, is anyone familiar with like a car accident attorney or medical malpractice attorney? Have you ever seen like a commercial like, hey, if you get into a car accident, call us. You don't have to pay us. You never seen that? No? Okay, the reason they can do that is because they work on contingency. If they make a lot of money, because I used to work for a personal injury firm, like let's say we get you $1 million, right? Which has happened. We did something against University of Miami and we got 5 million from them, okay? 5 million, but we are taking, well, we used to take like 40% contingency on what you made minus any other fees. So yeah, you don't have to pay anything, but on the back end, we're taking basically like a royalty from you. We're taking a percentage of what you make. All right. So a lot of attorneys will have a 5%. That's normal. Don't have an attorney take more than 5% from you if you're doing contingency, but take a 5% contingent from you because maybe like you're Russ, right? And you're making deals all the time. And so they just have an attorney on retainer and takes a 5% contingency because he's making $1 million every year. And there are times that people have publishing deals and they're 6 figures and the attorney will take a contingency. The problem with that is if I take a contingency, this is why I don't do it. If I take a contingency on your 6-figure deal, I'm going to try my hardest, whether I think about it or not, to make sure that deal goes through. And that may not benefit you, right? There are deals that will lock you in where it says it's like 10 songs, but it's 10 songs that they accept. And that also includes fractional songs. So let's say you were a writer, because that's usually the case. You're maybe one of 10 writers on a song. That's not going to count as one song. That's going to count as 1/8 of a song. And you have a 30-song deal. It's going to be a long time before you get a publishing contract. But if I'm getting a 5% contingency on it, I'll just be like, this is the standard, which is usually the case. And I may not advocate for you as much. So just know that most of the time when we're doing a contingency, most attorneys are just going to be telling you what it is, but they're going to be ushering it through because they want to make sure they get their contingency. Right? So that's why I want you to know about like contingencies and that. And one last thing, if we're bringing up actual scenarios, Migos and QC.
I was just about to be like, so what about this?
Exactly. So a lot of times you'll have a label, and I love labels because they'll do this. If they like you and you're doing really well, they'll be like, hey, come to the office, sit down. What's your favorite coffee? What's your favorite lunch? Like, what do you want? What can we do for you? And then what I love that they do is that sometimes they give you actual cash on the table. I've seen it once. And they'll put actual cash on the table and be like, this is our advance for you. Okay. And you're just like, that's a lot of money on a table. For me, great. Okay. So you're going to agree to this. But the person that they have, the attorney, he's not going to say he's not your attorney, but he's not. He's the attorney for the label. And he's like, don't worry, if you have any issues or questions, you can come to me. That attorney's not your attorney. That's the label's attorney. And so if they push the deal through, this is what happened with Migos, they found out their deal wasn't so great. So they ended up suing QC's attorney because he didn't make it clear that QC's attorneys for the record label. Have your own attorney. You want to make sure to have someone advocating on your side. If they put money on the table, know that they're probably shady. Read it extra carefully. Because if they're doing all these theatrics, they're trying to like use smoke and mirrors with you. Okay? And if they're already coming to you, you already have a fan base. No one's doing artist development anymore. So that means that you already, if they're giving you money, they know they're going to make at least 3 times more than what they're offering. Right? So if they give you $100,000, they know they're going to be able to make $300,000 for you. Right? So keep that in mind also with the negotiations. Try to keep creative control. And if it takes time and they get annoyed by you, know that you're just like, maybe that's not the people that you need to deal with, because they need to be willing to negotiate with you. Those who don't, those are the ones that you get trapped, and then people are like, I'm in a slave deal, right? So that's why I don't take contingency personally, because I know how that looks for me. I'm not saying every attorney that does that, because there are attorneys who work long-term with people that do that, and it's fine. But like for individual deals, definitely not. For a long-term client, maybe. But that's, no, I don't take contingency, but there are lawyers that do. And I'm not saying that they're bad, but I'm just saying just make sure that you have the lawyer really go over every single provision, even if it's, especially if it's a featured artist agreement or if it's a label agreement, like a 360 deal. Make sure also that they don't include entertainment income. Does anyone know what that is? I know you know what it is, Jay. Basically what it says is that because we're the label and we're going to make you hot, everything else that you do, we get 10 to 15% of it. That means if you act, you have a cooking show. I've seen people who are like, oh, I'm going to be in the stock market. They even take that. Like every other part of your life, they're taking 15%. Either say absolutely not or reduce what they're taking from your entertainment income. It needs to be related to your music. Okay? So there's like little things like that that you want to look out for.
360 vibes pretty much is what they put in you when they give you that situation.
Absolutely.
So to kind of wrap up a little before we get to questions, and especially when we talk about choosing a lawyer that advocates for you as an entertainment attorney, what do you think, I guess maybe on the client side, should they look for, and how do they build that, I guess, trust level, if you would, with your attorney, and how do you make sure that they're like, advocating for you, or is it just a matter of having communication?
Actually, the way that an attorney communicates with you will be helpful. So having the communication is key. That's why when I'm bringing on somebody who's a long-term client or even a short-term client for a negotiation, I try to have a conversation. Because at the end of the day, we're two people that are working together, and maybe we don't gel for some reason. Maybe you don't like that my voice feels high-pitched or something, or you know what I mean? Like it could be a lot of different things that you may not like, and maybe you want somebody who's more aggressive, right? So that's why it's a good idea just to make sure that the attorney has a free consultation for you if they take you on through the form to talk to you for at least 15 minutes to see if they can talk to you and figure out what they want to do with you. If you do a paid consultation, because I do offer that, I'm like, hey, if you just need to go over something so you can DIY it, make sure that they're patient with you. I always try to be as patient with people as possible, and I do my best to explain things in terms that you understand. So if an attorney just says, oh, they're going to indemnify you, and they don't tell indemnify you means that if somebody else does something wrong, then that somebody else has to pay you for what they did wrong. That's not helpful. They need to explain things to you in plain English because you're not speaking legalese, right? And that's another good way to know that you have an attorney. Make an attorney that doesn't make you feel stupid for not knowing something, is willing to understand where you're coming from if things are like difficult, right? And also just be willing to really communicate with you as much as possible, because this is a lot of back and forth. I don't do this on my own. I have to talk to you about a lot of things like, what do you want to do in order for me to get you from point A to point B, right? So that's what you want to look for in an attorney, somebody who is open, as honest, I guess, as attorneys can be, and who also is patient with you.
Love that, love that. Definitely need to get somebody that's patient with you, because if you're coming to them for expertise, that means you already need help. So if they're short with you coming to them for answers, that's probably not the person that's going to work for you. Let's see. We at a perfect time for question and answer. So First of all, thank you for all of your information and all of your wisdom. I feel like I even had some light bulbs go off for myself, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, I forgot about that. I need to pay attention to that. So listen, folks, this is why you need to have and keep yourself around and expand your team and add people to your team. Because as you see, people are experts for reasons. And this is why you hire an attorney, because she's an expert on these things. She knows the ins and outs of these things. It's not our job as creators to know and play all of these roles. Our job is to learn as much as possible for whatever your mental capacity might be. Figure out what your goal might be so you can articulate that. So when you do bring that person on, and eventually, everybody costs. So have a little budget aside. That way you can pay people for their time. But it makes it so much easier for you to be able to continue to grow when you have different people on your team who are handling things. So you can only focus on the music. So for you not to have to worry about and clench your teeth about if somebody's stealing your music, is this deal good for you? Is this opportunity well? Bring an attorney on your team if you can afford them and if it's a situation where it works for you.
And if you can't, just to book in that, there are plenty of free places that'll help you. That's why I did that 50 free legal services, but do it ahead of time. Do it as soon as possible. Get an attorney before you need an attorney. It's like getting insurance, right? Before you actually go to the hospital, you don't go to the hospital and then be like, I need insurance, right? You have it before you actually get sick. Same thing with an attorney. So there's places like the Harvard Rap Project. That's the Harvard Recording Artist Project. They do free, like what I do, it's transactional work. They create contracts for you. They did it for, I don't know if you know who she is, but Esperanza Spalding's like a really big classical artist. They did her work, and they'll create management agreements. They'll create all the templates I'm talking to you about, they'll do for you. But because they have a wait list and because it is a law school clinic, they're teaching future lawyers how to be lawyers under the supervision of their professors. There's going to be a wait list. So if you're already there 5 months before you know you're going to release a record and you get accepted, well then, bam, you already have an attorney that can help you for free. There's a small business development center, right? They also provide free resources for you, and they'll walk you through after an appointment to tell you like this is what you need, and they will refer you out to actually a legal clinic. So then you're ahead of the game because now you have somebody who's advocating for you on that sense. So you're probably wondering like, why would an attorney tell me like get free legal services and not come to me? Well, A, because I'm trying to retire in 2 years, and B, because I feel like it's super important for you to have information. Just because you don't have the funds now doesn't mean you can't get the help now. Everybody can get help at where they're at. You just have to know where to look.
I love that.
So that's it.
I love that. Before we get into questions, can you tell people where they can find you, how they can book consults, how do they get involved in the Latte Lawyer overall?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say, if you want to get in the mix with me, because
Hey, I like
thank you. There's 3 ways to do it. If you want one-on-ones, right now I'm taking consultations. So if you have a one-on-one consultation, you have a question specifically for your issue, I limit it to 30 minutes, but they're $50. I have another thing, which is my Substack, which is basically a newsletter that you can sign up for. And right now I'm walking people through how to do all the things that I do for themselves to DIY it. And we do workshops. So the first one was like, who here has an LLC? Anybody? I'm sure a lot of people do. Awesome. So if you have an LLC, does anyone know what the compliance requirements are to make sure that you're not breaking the law in your state or federal level, besides just filing your annual report? Yeah? Okay. So you need to file your annual report. You need to do the corporate. Hi, nope. You need to. Sorry, she said.
That was me before I looked on the page, so that's why I'm giggling too, because I'm like, ooh, I got that wrong on the quiz, so I need to go.
Yeah, that's why I took the quizzes, and I found out that people were like, it's causing me stress. I'm like, it's not supposed to. It's supposed to help you, but that was the point of the quizzes. But basically, there are things like you have to make sure that your business is okay to run. So you want to make sure you file your annual report every year with your state. You obviously want to make sure to pay your taxes, right? And then also this year, there's something called the Corporate Transparency Act. So now you have to fill out a form with the federal government to let the federal government know, specifically the Financial Crime Enforcement Network, that you're the owner of your business if you own 25% or more. So most of you, I know I am too, are single member LLCs, which means you're the only owner and operator of your business. So you're going to have to go ahead and register that. So the Substack is for me being like, hey, these are the steps you have to take. You don't have a lawyer, but you're going to DIY this yourself. So we do each step, and some of the workshops are free, like the BOI reporting workshop is free. I've done it for a bunch of people because it's a free application. I don't see the point of charging you. But other ones are like, hey, how do I do deal points? How do I make my own sound recording template? So that's what the Substack is for. And then by the end of the year, we're actually going to take a song from beginning to end. So you've registered your metadata, you've got your copyrights, you actually try to pitch it. That's what we're going to be trying to do too, to monetize it in sync. And you move forward with that. So literally, we're going to track the trajectory of the song.
That's going to be dope. I want to know about tracking the song because that sounds dope.
Well, I think you already, but you do that. And that's another thing about Jay as well. She gives consultations. Shout out to her because she handles metadata management. She does copyright registration too. She has her own team. So it's kind of like you'd be working with a manager and a lawyer if you use both of us, right? So you can use her for those parts to be able to make sure that your song is trackable and your registrations are done. And, you know, those things are completed. And she obviously won't manage you if you don't have any coming in, because she takes a percentage. We talked about this. She's going to tell you a no on the contingency. I'm not she takes contingency, but it has to have income coming
Absolutely will not.
But that's the same thing. Yeah, you want to think about that. And I think if you break it down step by step, right? Like this way, that's why I'm doing the Substack the way I'm doing it. It'll make it easier. And instead of just telling you how to do it, we're going to walk you through how to do it. Because again, I keep repeating, because I was trying to retire last year and people wouldn't let me someone do it this. But in 2 years' time, I will. So by the time that I'm gone, you're just going to be like, Somara already taught me. You know what I mean? And I'm good. And when I do get an attorney now, I can afford it because it's something that I'm able to afford because I don't have time to do it, not because I don't understand it.
Which is a very lovely feeling to know that we leave our clients sometimes with already knowing how to do it. Because I tell people all the time, like, I don't want to be with you all the time, okay? I do not want to be in your videos. I do not want to wear the shiny suits. That is not me, right? But I
They
do.
want you there. They want you in the video.
I don't want. I just was in somebody's video yesterday, and I did not want to be there, right? But it's like I want to get a postcard from you saying, "Hey, things that you taught me made it so like I sent my kid to college, or I bought a house, or I'm on vacation now because you taught me how to do your copyrights." Like that's what I want from people. So I love that you also have it where you're trying to like. Just like this is how the whole synergy started. You're teaching people. So make sure y'all look in the chat. I just dropped her link so you guys can subscribe to her Stack, excuse me. I also saw you had something with Gumroad, so I dropped that thing there as well.
Oh, that's if they want to break up with BMI. I did a whole thing for those who want to because of the BMI sale. But that's still gonna live on Gumroad for a little bit longer. I may just give it away on the Substack. We'll see.
That's why y'all need to go ahead and make sure y'all part of that Substack, because y'all want to be saying, you know what I'm saying, a couple lattes that might be coming towards you. So it's the time, y'all. I know people have questions. I know people want to get some of their tidbits out, and I'm gonna tell y'all, like I tell them on every webinar, ask the questions that y'all have now, because once you jump in my DM, it comes with a link, and that link comes with a payment portion, right? So the only dumb question is the question that you do not ask. So if you want to ask questions, once again, you can raise your hand. We will bring you on. That way you can kind of talk it out. If you want to jump in the chat and just ask them, we can do that too.
There's a question in the chat that I wanted to talk about because we were when I did the promo, I talked about this. So I do want to bring this up.
Good.
Okay. What to do if producer will not give you your stems? Great question. So if a producer doesn't give you your stems, the hope is that you already have a breach of contract, like a contract in place with your producer. At that point, it's theft. They've taken something that belongs to you. So you can actually file a cause of action in small claims court. If you're a sole proprietor, you can do it on your own. If you're not a sole proprietor and you're an LLC, you'd have to get an attorney, but you can usually end up going to legal aid to get that done, right? So then you would get a free attorney, and then you would sue that producer to get your stems. The other option with the person who's taken your stems is to send them what we call a scary demand letter, right? You can have an attorney write it. That usually helps, just being like, hey, you've taken my client's stems, you haven't returned them. If you don't give them to us, we're going to go ahead and take you to court. I've done that plenty of times, and I would say 9 times out of 10, we gotten what we needed. So that's an option for you, okay? So do those two things. I would send the demand letter first. If the producers kept your stems, you can go ahead and you can even use ChatGPT for this and say, hey, you have the stems, you haven't provided them to me. I need to have them by such and such date. If you don't, I'm going to have to take all available legal action against you. That's usually enough. If they don't take you seriously, go to an attorney. Like I said, there's legal aid. They can do it for you for free. Or most attorneys will do a demand letter for like between $150 to $250 for you and send it out so you can get your Sims back. If that doesn't work, then you can go ahead. If you're, like I said, if you're a sole proprietor, you can represent yourself, go to court, take that person. Not only will you get your Sims back, but you'll get damages. So financially, they gotta pay you damages on top of the Sims that they have to give you. So you may end up getting the money that you paid that producer back, plus extra money for the fact that he or she took your Sims and then give it back to you, or they, and you're good to go. And you've also paid for your attorney's fees because you're gotten that money back. So those are your options.
Awesome. Let's just go down in the chat. So I see, can a mix engineer negotiate points? If so, what is the structure for that?
Okay, so engineers are in a weird place. Engineers can get points, but they usually don't get points. The reason why engineers normally don't get points is because you're looking at who creatively contributed, okay? So the only way that you can negotiate points is just to ask, right? There's no specific structure, but usually you're getting the lower end of points, so we're looking at 1 to 3% for you on the point scale. So that would, and it wouldn't be points like points that you would give a producer. Remember how you get percentage on the revenue? You'd probably just be getting a letter of direction. Okay, so the letter of direction is with Sound Exchange, and how you figure out your letter of direction percentage would usually be to divide what normally would have been your points divided by what the artist is getting. In your case, you're probably looking at just getting maybe 1 to 3% and no points. So you get Sound Exchange money, but you're not getting any points as an engineer, unless, which happens a lot, you're the engineer that's also the producer. Because sometimes the engineer adds a little production to it. You add a production, now you're in business. You're like, hey, I'm not just the engineer, I was also a producer. I should be getting points.
Definitely know the different roles that you play in different situations, so you know how you can get paid on your situations. Let's see.
That's trademarkable. You should do that. Good one. I like that. Okay.
Is the producer required to do the metadata?
No, but they should. And let me explain why. All right. So does anyone here use, we can be honest with each other. I feel like we know each other now. Does anyone use the garbage site BeatStars? Anybody? Everybody?
All of my clients.
Everybody. Okay. It's fine if you use it. No judgment. But BeatStars, the problem we have with BeatStars, but one of the good things that they do use is that they mention that you have a beat that's solely belonging to you. You retain it because it's non-exclusive. You can reuse it with other people, right? So when you have that beat, right, you want to make sure that you have your metadata encoded in it. If you have an ISRC already included in your beat, and let's say somebody tries to use the same instrumental, it's going to track and there's going to be an issue. So then you know when people are actually infringing on your work and using it. So on the new song, so the beat and the lyrics, you may not be the person that's putting in the metadata for there, but for the original beat that you're using, always put an ISRC code somewhere in there. And if you can, make sure that you have your own ISRC code, which you can pay $95 for, and it lets you generate up to 100,000 codes a year. Instead of waiting and having like DistroKid or any of those other places give it to you, because they usually charge you a price for that. And if they take it down, there's a chance you could lose your ISRC code. So we want this year everybody to own their metadata. So if you are a producer, it's a good idea to have your own codes, and make sure to put that in your agreement that the beat is yours, it has its own ISRC code, and let people know it's trackable. So if they try to use the instrumental without telling you that they're using the instrumental, then you're easier able to take it down because you can then locate it. So the short answer is yes, but that's the longer answer to explain why yes.
Like the long answer. All right, let's see. As an artist, what can you negotiate if they're asking you to split your pub with other songwriters?
Okay. You said artist or feature artist?
As an artist.
Okay, as an artist, when you are having to reduce your shares with other songwriters and composers, so those are your producers, what you want to try to do is do a reserve. So let's say that you're like, if it's publishing, I have a 50% reserve, meaning that I can't, whatever is going to happen, I'm not going to be able to reduce the amount from that 50% or that 30%, right? Or say like it's going to be split evenly, but they can't put any reductions on the artists or what we call the main artist publishing. So let's say you add somebody else to your split sheet, you're at 25%, then they can't reduce your percentage. They have to reduce everybody else's percentage. So you can make sure that they don't actually, that's basically, I call it the no reduction clause, but you want to make sure that they put in there that they can't reduce your shares because they've added on other third-party producers, artists, engineers, etc.
I like it. I like it. We got any other questions, comments, concerns, church announcements? Don't get
And
my.
where do we find this? I don't know where do we find this is. Do you know what this is referring to? Yeah, it can be the same for featured artists. You have less leverage when you're a featured artist, but it can be the same. You can ask for it. Oh, if you want to find how to get your own ISRC, that's easy. I'm going to put that in the chat. If you're in the US.
Let's see. I'll take this next one. Say when working with producers, I normally have to split 50-50, but how do we navigate leasing beats? Ooh, I mean, a lease is all about whatever is in that agreement, right? I'm not gonna lie, I don't like leasing beats, y'all.
It's not a real thing. I mean, technically a lease is a license.
It's like
right?
renting to me. It's like going to Blockbuster and getting a beat. You got to give it back eventually. You're never gonna be able to have it fully to be able to do what you want with it. When you scratch it up, it's assed out. Like I don't like leasing beats for real, for real.
But what was the question exactly for the lease? How do we navigate leasing beats? Just make sure that you know what you want to do first. Know what you don't want. It's like a relationship. Know what you don't want and know what you do want when you're looking at navigating leasing beats. I'm assuming you're using BeatStars for this. And when you speak with the producer, make sure, I'm trying not to curse this here, but I'm gonna say this one thing. Make sure that shit is actually exclusive. Pardon my French. A lot of times you'll have somebody that says it's an exclusive beat and they will take that exclusive beat and use it with other people. You put it on YouTube and then you get a copyright strike. Okay? So make sure it's an actual exclusive beat, that it belongs to you, and that you're able to go ahead and have rights to it fully. That it's perpetual, which means that you can use it forever. That if you want to make it royalty free, for at least the mechanical part, do that as well. And then make sure that you're the person who's inputting all of the information into your PRO. You're the person inputting the information into your sound exchange. You want to have as much control of the song as possible, okay? If you're not getting a work for hire, make sure that's included. So if you're dealing with a beat lease and it says that they have the right to go ahead and put the song into all these platforms, you want to make sure that you're reading over that and saying, no, actually, since this is an exclusive lease, make it exclusive. Don't try to make it non-exclusive. It's an exclusive lease. This is how much I'm paying you. These are the rights that I have. I'm the one that's going to be inputting all the data. If anything, I'm the one that's going to be inputting the metadata as far as the ISRC is concerned. The more control you have over that song, the better it's going to be for you to make sure that you're not going to get screwed.
And just make producer friends, you guys, so you can stop using BeatStar and having 55 different people with the same exact beat. It's terrible, guys.
It is, but I mean, also, if you're gonna do like, let's say you have the old beat, it's non-exclusive, right? And you're using it for a new one. When you make what we call the new song, which will be the new composition and the new, I don't like using the word master for a lot of reasons. People now use recording, which is a better term, but the new recording, make sure that you have exclusive rights to those. You can make sure to have that. So maybe you don't have the original beat.
Do that.
Maybe he felt it, that.
I was like, I thought it was a sneak or all right, cool.
I think somebody got excited.
Okay, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, I think I answered most of it.
Somebody asked, do these rules on this call apply to artists in Africa as well? Or would they need lawyers in the US to protect their copyrights as a producer or artist?
I'm glad you brought that up because I had to work on a deal with an African artist. So actually, a lot of these rules, the way that it works is contract, you can decide what rules apply. So you can have an African artist, but the governing law, which is in a section you always want to look at in your contracts, can be in the state of New York, which I've done. That was our contract with our African artist. So these rules apply depending on what place you decide that if there's an issue, that's where you're going to be dealing with, like what country is going to control that contract. So we worked with an African attorney. Actually, specifically, he was from Nigeria. So we worked with him to get the contract done, but the governing law for that contract was for the US, specifically the state of Florida. So that's the great thing about working with contracts. Oh, it was his dog. I was like, that doesn't sound human. That makes so much more sense. So if you are an African artist, and I don't want to say African because it's a continent, but if you are in a country in Africa, you can make the decision of how you want to make this contract work. That's the great thing about working with other artists, is you get to structure how this deal looks like, and you get to structure, once you make an agreement, how things are going to work out if there's an issue. A lot of times, you're not even going to go to that country's court. You'll have something called mediation and arbitration. So you'll end up going to, I call it expedited court. Instead of going through the court system, you have an arbitrator who'll make a final judgment. So the decision is just like a court decision, and it's a faster process and it's a cheaper process. So when I'm dealing with people who are from different countries, I'd always put in arbitration and mediation section. It's also called alternative dispute resolution. Okay.
Just had that in agreement. Then I had a contract to do today, and that was in there, man.
Exactly. When you're working, most of the time, especially with anybody, labels, credit card companies, you may notice some there too. It's always going to be alternative dispute resolution, because going to court can bankrupt you.
Yes. People don't realize that it costs to go to court and to litigate.
Yeah. Also, your mental health. I used to litigate too. So as an attorney, it wasn't even my case, but it's exhausting to have to go to court. I don't know if you've ever seen depositions, like Pharrell's deposition, where he just looks dejected and sad the entire time. He's like, I don't want to be here. Imagine that depositions on average last between 6 to 8 hours. And the attorney is looking to make sure that you're lying. And you're not going to necessarily remember what happened 6 months ago, right? They're like, but in the last time you said that it was 2 days, and now you're saying it's 6 days. You're a liar. And then that becomes a problem. Then you hate the attorney. You don't want to be there. People have yelled. I've seen people throw chairs. So it just, if you can avoid it, it's better not to litigate. Always try to do mediation. It's usually an arbitration. It's usually a much smoother process, and people tend not to be as crazy.
And your attorney's not happy.
Yeah, it's cheaper attorney fees, to be honest. So that's good.
I've seen the invoice, and it's like, just because you went to court today, you get to charge that amount? Lord.
Well, because we have to charge you for our travel to the court, the stenographer. Sometimes before they used to pay for lunch for us too. What else do we pay for? The mailing of the complaint to the courthouse. You're paying for a lot. So try to avoid it if you can.
A lot of fees. Someone said, can you repeat where we can get those templates you mentioned earlier?
Oh, the templates are happening via the Substack. So every Monday I put either I'll have reduced prices for the workshops or free workshops. So they're not all available. But there is a place where you can get templates. I think it's called musicbusinesscontracts.com. They're very well known. They are actually pretty cheap, and they have pretty standard language for legal contracts. The only thing is, for my contracts, I'm trying to make them more artist friendly. So there's something called the plain language movement, and I'm working on making it so like you can read the contract and actually understand what it is. So it'll be, if you're on the Substack, you'll know when the contracts are coming out.
Y'all better join the Substack.
Yeah, I'm hitting the Substack hard, because I don't know if everybody knows this, but for people who are in Texas and Florida, it's hard to say that I'm from Florida sometimes. I'm in Miami, so I feel like it makes it a little bit better, but we're very embarrassing. And then the second embarrassing thing that we did is the Supreme Court. I mentioned it on my page. They just had a case against Instagram and other social media platforms where they want to change how they moderate the platform. So there is if Instagram and the other social media platforms lose, there could be the chance that Instagram may not be in Florida anymore or in Texas anymore. That could be one of the things they decided to take out. Moderation means, like, if somebody puts something against that's racist or sexist or that's pornographic, they can't take it down. they have to they have to explain why they're taking it down, they have to keep it up, and they have to go ahead and provide all these extra steps that the state of Florida and the state of Texas are asking for. Yeah, we are embarrassing, Larry. I agree. So yeah. Florida, I mean, Miami is the only reason I'm like, hey, I'm from Miami, and I mention that a lot. You know what I mean? But yeah, you can't say you're from Florida. You have to say you're from Miami. Otherwise, there's no showing your face anywhere. Yeah. So that's why I'm doing the Substack. It's for that reason. And we're gonna do more things like on YouTube as well, just to be like documenting the journey and showing you how to do it. I'm tired of telling people this is what you need to do. Like I told most of you people what to do here today. But how many, I mean, to be fair, how many of you are going to be able to actually do a deal point agreement tomorrow by email? I hope a lot of you, but yeah, I see you, Isaac. I see your face. It's telling me no. And that's cool. You know what I mean? But I feel like that's what the Substack is for, is to be like, here's a template of how to do it. I've also taught people how to use ChatGPT to make their initial draft. So then when they show it to an attorney, it's already halfway done, and it's actually cheaper to have the attorney review it. So there's things that you can do that you need an attorney for help, but you can at least start learning most of the stuff yourself. And that's what I'm here for. No glue. Thank you, Passion, for being honest, but I got you. I know the truth of it. So that's what the Substack is for.
I just dropped the Substack link once again in the chat, so make sure y'all hit that, subscribe. Any other following questions? And until we get then, I just want to preach just one quick situation, right? I don't know if y'all paying attention to what's going on in the news, and I'm going to emphasize on this because it is insane right now, right? But anybody who is a songwriter, a publisher, it is so important right now that you get your catalog in order. And what I mean by your catalog in order, I mean make sure that your metadata is in order. All of your registrations on all of these different platforms, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, GMR, whatever PRO you're with, specifically the MLC, and specifically with your PRO, right? On top of the fact that you need to be making sure you got your sound exchange together, and I'm going to be real and I understand, this is my soapbox time, right? These registrations, I know sometimes they get tedious. I know they're a lot. But what you have to realize is these are your different realms of income, right? So if you just do the job now, do the registrations early, the money is going to flow automatically. You don't have to worry about what's going on and where it's at. There have been, or there is, a new settlement of about $400 million. So let's go through history real quick, right? 2018-ish, if you would, there was something passed sometime around in the Music Modernization Act. This is probably the one thing that Trump actually did right. Boom, I'm biased, whatever though, right? So this whole Music Modernization Act was pretty much saying, listen, some of these laws and some of these situations that we have going on with these DSPs and with these new companies, there's no transparency. I don't know where the money is going and what's going on. So let's update some of these companies and let's get some rules when it comes to transparency. Boom, this company called the MLC is born. The MLC is the Mechanical Licensing Collection. They are the people who pay out your digital mechanical royalties. So if you are getting what we call interactive streams, meaning you pay $9.99 for Spotify, you go to Spotify, you say, I want to listen to Jay-Z Blueprint, Jay-Z Blueprint plays. That is an interactive stream. Anytime somebody does that with your music, money is being made. Money is getting sent to the MLC. So they have this thing called the Copyright Royalty Board. Follow me, y'all. These are the people who literally negotiate your rates of what you get paid from these DSPs. It is pretty much all the big wigs for the DSPs and all the people who represent the different artists and the creators who are literally pretty much having this negotiation to say, this is how much you're getting paid for each stream. Number one, they came up with a rate. The rate then got appealed because they felt like it was too low, right? So there was one chunk of cash that came just from this first round of the MLC being created. When it first got created, I think it was $424 million of unclaimed royalties, right? So you got this bucket over here. Then we went and we said, okay, the Copyright Royalty Board, these rates are too low. We want to renegotiate them. So when we renegotiate them, these DSPs never paid out the new renegotiated rate. So now we finally got all that money, right? And they're ready to start releasing it. They're still reaching out to different DSPs. They're saying it's maybe 10 to 15 million more dollars that they're about to get. What does all this mean? There is about to be an influx of royalties, about maybe 270 million specifically for mechanical, and about 120, 30, if you would, that's going to go towards performance royalties. Don't quote me on these numbers, but I just dropped a link to this Instagram post that I made that pretty much has a lot of stuff that's going on, and they have the correct numbers. Shout out to David Israelite. He's one of the guys who's been fighting for us and getting this stuff done. When this money falls, right? I'm not saying that you're going to get $1 million. I'm not saying this at all, right? But there might be a couple of coins that might belong to you in this here pot. But if you do not register your music, all of your music, your full catalog, every single song that you have on these DSPs, if it is not registered with the MLC, if it is not registered with your PRO, I'm going to be real honest, if you really don't have copyrights on this music, because if you don't have a copyright, you don't have no ownership. You do, but you don't, and it gets weird. But
sorry, real quick, because this has happened before. With copyright, you actually have the copyright if you create it and it's original and it's in a fixed medium tangible form of expression. But if you don't register it, then it's going to be hard to claim it. It's going to be hard to prove ownership. So that's what Jay is saying. It needs to be registered. That's super important. I'm done. Go ahead, please.
Just need a paper trail to show people, like, again, some of these places, especially with this influx, they're now looking to like make sure, like, for example, with the MLC, you might put a catalog up and say, for instance, you have like a substantial amount of royalties. They're going to make sure that it actually belongs to you first. Like sometimes, and I know this because I'm real cool with the MLC, they're asking people like, cool, we'll relinquish this cash when you show us a copyright that says that this is actually yours for. Now, I get it that when you make it, it's yours, but this is what they're asking people. Like, we need proof that it's yours because I can't send you these $40,000 if it's really not yours for real, right? So this is why I always preach, do the copyright registration. But in order for y'all to get paid these royalties that are out here, and I know everybody is like, oh, we only get paid pennies, and like, I get it. We fighting to get y'all more. But listen, these pennies add up. So don't let these pennies sit in these black box royalties by not doing your part, by doing these registrations, you guys. And what I mean by registrations is you create a song, you put it out to these DSPs, you get these various codes, ISRC, UPC, you got a release date, you have this metadata, right? What do you do with it? You have to give this information to these companies that cut these checks. Because if they don't have this information, they literally don't know where to send your money. They don't have your name. They don't have your address. They don't have your bank account, nothing about your direct deposit. They don't know that the song is yours, so they don't know to send you the money. So part of your growth as an artist is going to have to be standing on your own business for real, which just means doing some of these registrations. It's not as hard as people think. I'm not even going to lie to y'all for real. It's tedious, which means it takes time because you got to click here and put this in and da-da-da-da. But to me, you think about it as a bank account. I'm just going to go in and make sure I do my deposits in this bank account. So when these deposits roll, it's going to come directly to me. It's too much money out here right now for anybody not to be getting their royalties, especially with this influx about to come. Outside of the influx, though, this is how y'all get paid at the end of the day. So please start doing these different registrations with these platforms.
And if I can mention what you're saying, again, this is where there's the checklist, right? And I know you do this as well. So both Jay and I do this. Jay does it like where you have to pay her for the service to do it. I'm just like, here's the information, you do it yourself. I'm not trying to do it for you. But Ria mentioned this. Should the publisher be doing that part? If you are self-published, meaning you're a vanity publisher, right? You are the publisher. You have to do that part, right? If you're a pub admin, some pub admins don't do this for you. Songtrust does, but other pub admins I know that people have aren't collecting on their behalf. I literally looked at the MLC repertoire today, and there were lots of unclaimed royalties from somebody who had a publisher. So they thought the publisher was doing it, but they weren't. So it's on you to always double check. Like people are, I like some of Taylor Swift songs, but what I really like about Taylor Swift is she's like, she has a lawyer for her lawyer. She's got an accountant for her accountant, right? You need to do the same thing for your publisher. Go into the MLC. You don't have to do it every day. You can go once a quarter and just be like, all right, are all my songs here? And if it's not, just be like, hey, knock, knock, publisher. What's up? My stuff isn't on here. I'm paying you money. You're in breach of contract. I would hate to have to sue you for this. I've done that letter before. and then they immediately get on it and do what they're supposed to do because they're taking a percentage of your money. So if you don't do this and you lose out and it goes in the black box, you know who that goes to? The top 3 people on Billboard. That means Drake is getting more money. Yeah, it's usually Drake. Drake is taking your money. And I know that you're like, oh, it's like a little piece or whatever, but it's like stocks. That builds up over time, right? You don't care like creating your 50 cents on stocks. You're going to do the same thing going forward. Like you want to make sure to collect everything that belongs to you. You're not just going to give money away to somebody else when it's your money that you want. So that's it.
Y'all take money to make this art. Please take time to get the money from the art that you're creating. At the end of the day, don't let Drake.
Checklist. Yeah, there's also don't let Drake take your money. Yes. A checklist. That's what the Substack is for. It's literally checklists to do all this because that's what we as lawyers do. Most people, publishers, all of us who work in the entertainment industry, we have checklists that we refer to, being like we have to do the same thing every single time. We're like, oh, did we have this? Did we make sure that they have a sound recording agreement? Do we have the copyright registration? Do we have all the authors on this copyright? Do we make sure that we have the proper paperwork that assigns or has a work for hire so they can be the claimant on this copyright? So all of that stuff is included. And then who wants to be on Billboard? This is a question I had because we're talking about paying for things that you don't need to pay for. I think you know where I'm going with this, Jay.
Exactly.
If you want to be on Billboard and be considered, you have to fill out paperwork to do that. If you have symphonic distribution, they charge you $5.99 per ISRC, which is like each track code, and they charge you $15.99 per UPC, right? What that means, and that's actually a free form that you can use.
It's a Google form.
It's a Google form, and I know people are like, "This looks like a scam." I'm like, "No, that's real. It's 2 Google forms that you can use, and the form that Symphonic makes you fill out for $5.99 is actually longer than the Google form that's free to actually get you there." So that's why I'm like, all these checklists are important, but I'm not going to tell you all of this at once because it get overwhelming, right? So yes, wait, what is exactly right, Linda? So I can actually, since we're here, I have it. I'm going to give it to you guys right now. The 2 forms. You don't even need to join the Substack for that. I was so upset that they were charging for this. I was like, everybody needs to know this. So
Luminate.
Yeah, and you don't have to join Luminate to register it. And then if you want to go on to radio, you have to register with Mediabase.
Once again, it's a lot of registrations that got to be done, but it's a lot of money that you can get from these registrations.
That's true. And Fiverr has a question, but you can also hire people on Fiverr to do it for you or train somebody to do it for you. So there's a client that I have that's
train to do it yourself.
So yeah, do it yourself first. I agree. But like if you have a bunch of catalogs, there's somebody that I know that got somebody out of, I think, Puerto Rico that charges about $5 per hour. And she's able to do all the registrations that the person taught her for them. So do it yourself, absolutely. But then you can train your staff to do it because once you become a label, right, you're not going to be the person that's going to be doing all the data input. So you could treat it the same way. Know how to do it first yourself. I agree completely, Jay, but you can train others to do it for you and then pay them a fee to do that. So then that's less paperwork for you and you can focus on the creative part. That's how we do it at the firm anyway.
That's exactly what, shout out to the interns that we definitely pay and teach them how to But it's cool because now they're rolling on their own and they're confident of even putting their own projects out because they've learned how to do the whole like paperwork process. I got kids who are fresh out of college. It's like, I know everything about metadata. So like it works.
Right. I think there's a hand up from FISA.
FISA, you coming on? You asking your question? You showing your face?
Yes. Okay. Yes. If you have a distributor, I heard you say something pertaining to a distributor. If you have a distributor, what is the proper procedure to track it?
Who's your distributor?
It's a private distributor. I'm not going to say her name. It's a.
Oh, that's fair.
Private.
Okay, so if you have a private distributor who's, are you saying distributor or publisher? Because
distributor. She's distributing. Distributor.
Physical or digital or both?
Both.
Okay. You can ask for. I don't know what your agreement is. I'm assuming you signed a contract. Look at your contract and see about your audit rights. That's how you know. Your audit rights will tell you how you can make sure that you're getting your statements as far as what's being distributed, and ask you if she doesn't have it included. Ask for the UPC codes that the person, I guess your distributing company has, and ask for all of the ISRCs that they have. That's how you can track to make sure that they're not missing anything. You can also, depending on who this distributor is, like if it's DistroKid, I'm going to use them as an example because I don't know who you're using. You actually have access to your entire repertoire, your entire database of songs. So you can see what's there, what's missing, and what's not. So you can clear it with them. So if you see that there's a song.
I've used DistroKid. I have used DistroKid. So.
Okay. So again, you said you're using a private one. So look at your contract and see what your audit rights are. And then from there, make sure to contact them and say, hey, I need to do an audit of all of the songs that you've distributed for me because I need this information. And also another thing that you can throw out there is say, I need this information for my accountant. That usually makes them more willing to give you this information if you say it's for monetary purposes.
Got you. Excellent. And I'm going to be contacting you as well.
Well, remember, I'm retiring in 2 years. So if you want to join that Substack, I got you. But I have other people that are very good as well that I can refer you to if you'd like to contact them for more long-term services.
She said she out of here, yo.
I even looked at Publix for a retirement cake. I found out how much it was.
Oh, it's happening, you guys. Goals, man. Big time goals. All right, we wrapping up, y'all. It's 8:35. Any last questions, comments, concerns, church announcements? Going once, going twice.
I have one thing to say about Jay. Just throwing that out there. Follow her. I don't use threads. I'm terrible with threads. But Jay's threads are good. Follow her threads.
Thank you. Threads is fun, man. Threads is it's super fun. I don't know if y'all want threads or not, but that's normally where like I let my ADD brain kind of go. So it's like whatever I'm thinking about or whatever happens, I'm normally like in real life. Like I was in a contract negotiation today, and I'm like, this contract is absolutely terrible. And it's like, and I started writing out like things you should look for when you're doing contracts type thing. So that's where the unloaded, uncensored brain kind of goes. But that's also where a lot of my like list as far as checklists, things you need to look out for, like that's where a lot of that stuff is on threads. If you register for this, you're probably already in our text message database. So we will be sending out, of course, a recap of this. We also do all kind of stuff, man. We always doing random just Zooms to help people out. We're sending out different events that we're affiliated with. We're sending out just random free gems. When I find something, I'm sending it out. So if you want to be in the loop of what we have going on with Jayoko ENT, make sure that you are on our text message list. Most of y'all should be on it by default. If not, IG, link in our bio, join the text list. Welcome to the family, for real, for real. And yeah, make sure before we leave, drop all of y'all contact information. You do not know who you can meet in here, so please don't be quiet. Put your info, network with people. All right, Air Fairy going.
Here's a question.
Hello, I do have a really quick question.
Let's do it.
It's a little bit off topic, but still under the premise of like in the same vein, kind of. A friend of mine recently was approached by a major label, and they're like, "Oh, I love your art. Can you send me some music?" And so she's just opening up the floodgates and sending all of her stuff. So what would you say to that, and what's the best way for artists to protect ourselves in situations like that?
NDA, man.
Okay.
NDAs are good, but sometimes it's going to be difficult to enforce if you don't have the money to enforce it.
Right.
So I
This
think
is a
bonkers.
major label.
I've worked with majors. They're probably some of the worst thieves in the world, no offense, when it comes to paying people. If you see all the lawsuits that happen, it's usually against Sony, Universal, and Warner. Mostly Sony. I got a bone to pick with them. But what I would tell you, if first of all, your friend should never give more than what was asked for. That's insane. Please tell her never to do that again. And more importantly, if she's going to be providing them with songs, she needs to make the song she is providing, she needs to register the copyright. And when she sends it to them, she needs to provide them a copy of that registration. Because then it shows them, hey, I'm sending you work, but I registered it.
Right.
So if you decide that you want to go ahead and use it, now she has a basis to sue them for willfully violating her copyright, which means that she's not only going to be able to get regular damages, she's going to be able to get damages for them willfully violating that. So that's triple damages, what we call treble damages. So she could end up with a windfall and buy a new apartment or a condo if she'd like, if that's the case. So tell your friend, please, next time when she's sending out music to any label, make sure that's the first thing that you should do is make sure to copyright it. And she'll, if it's a whole, I guess, list of songs, she needs to do it under a group registration, which means instead of paying $130 for one song, she can pay $130 for up to 20 songs.
Right.
Okay. So that's what I'm telling you is important to do, because you said that and my heart sank a little bit, because that's how people's stuff gets stolen, and the label doesn't care until you come after them and sue them, and they know 9 times out of 10 artists aren't going to have enough money to sue them.
I have another question. So I was told by a person at one point that if you have a song protected and you send in the copyright, that the copyright it only counts for the version of the song that you sent in. So what do you say to that? And also, do I need to copyright my lyrics separately? Like if I make a beat,
to that part.
how does that work?
Okay, so for the first one, I don't necessarily understand the question, so if you could clarify that, that would be helpful.
So like if I send in a song, right? And I'm sending in the entire work of art, right? But I know that I don't own the beat. Like how does that work if I've sent in the song over a beat that someone else made?
Oh, and you don't have paperwork?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're in trouble.
Oh, that's right. It felt very troublous.
Yeah, I don't want to like cause problems, but that's troubling. When you send in a copyright registration, you're basically telling the US government under penalty of perjury and then lying that that's yours completely. When you do that, that's a problematic. I don't know did you put that you were the sole author? We're not gonna talk about what the actual song is because this is recorded.
Right.
But did you
And
put
of
that
course,
you're the
it's hypothetical, right?
right, hypothetical artist, right? Did the hypothetical artist put the producer and hypothetical artist as the author and the claimant, or did the hypothetical artist just say that the hypothetical artist owns the whole copyright?
Hypothetical artist did list the producer as well. And
okay, as author and claimant, or just author? Please tell me both.
Author, I believe it's just author.
Who's the claimant? The hypothetical artist?
Yes.
Hypothetical. Dave, stop with the face. Hypothetical artist. What you can do is you can amend the copyright registration. That will save you. Just say that you want to amend it so that way it's owned by the producer and the hypothetical artist. Because without paperwork, by default, everyone who creatively contributed gets equal shares in that copyright. So that means that the producer owns 50% and the artist owns 50%. So you have the hypothetical artist has a saving grace here because you didn't get an attorney to do it. The person did it. So you can just amend the copyright registration and fix it before it becomes a problem.
Okay, cool. So it's kind of like God watches over fools' babies, that vibe. You can fix it.
I don't know about fools, but maybe babies.
Okay.
Yeah. And not a fool, just, something that can be corrected and fixed. You're just amending a situation that happened before, the hypothetical artist.
For the hypothetical artist.
For the hypothetical artist, yes.
Right.
Allegedly.
Right. In caps.
Caps and exclamation mark. Yes. And then what was the other question?
Oh, that thing gone. Like, that question has left my mind.
It was about a composition, I believe. Or the lyrics?
Yes. So I need to send in, like, let's say if I do have, do I send in the lyrics as a poem? Like, how does that work? Okay. That's what I've.
If it's the way also that you can do it, and again, there's so many workshops that I'm working on. I think I'm just doing all educational stuff at this point. But for singer-songwriters, there's a way to get around having that issue. So what I tell them to do is make their own reference track with the melody and the lyrics, register it as a single application. And then when they go to the producer now is making a remix version of the song. So then they're not going to own the composition. They're only going to own the remix, right? As far as the work for hire. So you don't even have to deal with the BS of having to have them be the original author on the composition. It's all you. You have your copyright registration, and now you save yourself money and time. And then if somebody wants to re-record your song, you don't have to pay the producer. They're only paying you.
Okay. Cool.
For the composition side. And it's a single application, it's $45. So take those lyrics, make a little do-do-do next to it, like behind it, register that, and then you're good to go. So then when you make the remix with the producer, you're only having to handle the sound recording and not the musical composition. Does that make sense?
It does. Okay. Yeah, I
That's a
appreciate
good question. That
you.
was high level copyright registration right
Hey,
there. And
you
I'm
gotta
glad you
get
asked that
to it
question.
because there's a lot of hypothetical artists out here that are just winging it because you want to protect yourself, but you don't know what you're doing. And then lawyers are like, I'm $2,500 an hour. And it's like, oh.
To be fair, I said 250. I didn't say 2,500.
Oh, no. I've been quoted that before.
Okay, I was like, come on,
like,
we don't have to come for me at this
no,
point.
no.
I said
Not
250.
personal. But I've been quoted that. And I'm like, guys, like, I'm just going to cry in the car real quick. I'll be back. But I appreciate you doing this for sure.
No problem. And like I said, I'm trying to build more of a community because the way that the place changes, the way that the music industry changes is that everybody knows what's going on. That's why all this stuff happens, is because there are artists who are out here not knowing what their rights are and not knowing the basics of things. If you know the basics of things, it's going to make it harder for people to take advantage of you. So I'm really glad that you're willing to step up for the hypothetical artist and ask that question.
Yeah, it's a lot of hypotheticals out here floating around.
I hear you. All right.
Thank you. I really appreciate you.
No problem. Good question.
I want hypothetical artists on a t-shirt now, man. Somebody please make
I mean, you can. Also, and last thing for everybody, please trademark your artist name. That's important. That's very important. So, if you can do that, and I know I'm throwing so many things at you, that's why I'm doing the Substack. So every week I put like a little GIF in there, so it's cute and it's not scary. So you can do all of the things. So this week is LLC. Next week will be I already gave you the Luminate thing, but how to do it and to register with Mediabase. And then the next step will be for my singer-songwriters, I'm going to have a specific 4-week course for them. And then for my producers, I'm going to have a specific 4-week course for them. So everyone should be able to handle these things on their own. I think there's one last question from Afro Fairy, but I know we're over time. So you let me know what you want to do.
We can run the last question.
Okay.
Thank you. Really appreciate y'all. Okay, last question. Trademarked artist name, right? So I'm still figuring out the protections of that. Like, I understand, like, it's yours now, but like, let's say when it comes to like a domain name, right? Or if somebody is using your name on a monetized page, like what exactly are you, like, what's the coverage of when you trademark your stage name, artist name?
Again, great question. You sure you're not a lawyer?
I was a legal studies major at one point.
There we go.
Actually,
I was getting legal vibes. It was like these questions. All right. For the trademark, now with anything, just like with copyright, right? You only get protection for as much as you're willing to enforce that protection, right? So for instance, I had a client who has a clothing brand. It was called Superdade. And we had somebody else that had his domain, a username that was also Superdade before he got his trademark registration. We were able to go to Instagram and get that page taken down. Okay. Even though they had the name before he had it. So that is very helpful on social media sites. For websites, you would try to go to the person who has the web name and say, I have a trademark, it's registered. Once you get that registration, and you can try to have them take it down. Now, websites tend to be a little bit more difficult, so you may have to go ahead and take that to court, but usually just having your trademark registration is enough to say, hey, you're infringing. And then if they refuse to take it down, now you can sue the domain provider for infringement on your trademark and the person that infringed. So that's double the money for you, for each person that infringes, okay? Yeah. And then other protection that you can have as far as your trademark name, the reason why you want it is specifically for the DSPs. If you ever looked up your favorite artist and you're trying to find out who they are, this happens to me all the time. There's an artist called MO. She's with Major Lazer. There's another group that's British called MO. Whenever I look up for her name, sometimes I find their music under her artist profile. Okay. If you make sure to have a trademark, it's going to keep those names separate. And if you see that they're there, you can go to Spotify, reach out to them and say, hey, you have this person's infringing. A, this person's infringing on my trademark. B, you're putting their music with my music. And then C, you send a letter to them saying they have to change it or you're going to have to go after them in court. It's not nice, but it's also going to make sure that your fans are going to be able to find you. Yeah. Right? So trademark protection, you can't do any of these things unless you actually apply for the protection in the first place. And a lot of artists can do this on their own. This is another thing that I taught people. Look at other artists who've already sent in their registrations. Money Long, Slim Shady. If you look at those, they can usually make a little blueprint for you on what you need to do. And you also need to make sure to file an affidavit because you're using basically like a pen name for you. So you've got to add basically an affidavit saying, I'm allowing the trademark office to use my pen name, my stage name, my artist name for this trademark.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. This is wonderful.
You're welcome. Do you need to be like a legal intern at some point? Because I could take one. I'm just saying.
Oh, hey man, you never know. I work better and more efficiently when I have a lot on my plate. So let me move some things around and I got you. You're gonna get neo soul and a nice little shadow.
Ooh, I get like an instrumental track and I get an intern. I like this. I like this a lot. All right, cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good questions.
Told you never know who you meet or what opportunity it comes. You just got to show up, man. So this was great. This was amazing. I learned a lot. I don't know about y'all, but I got homework too. So shout out to everybody sticking along. I know it's a lot of information, but this is how we change the narrative of everything by education, you guys. The more that we learn, the more that we understand, the easier this gets, the more money we make, the more y'all going to create. Education is the key to everything. So again, I appreciate all of you all for coming through tonight. Attorney Somara, thank you for all of your jewels, your wisdom, your insight, the fact that we didn't know half of these things and now we know it now. Please,
well, I mean, you know a lot of it, but thank you for the time and for the energy and everything. This has been great. And everyone, thank you for the good questions. This helps me make more information on the page that's more relevant to all of you. So this is very helpful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I always like to leave with, we do like a quick little 60-second frenzy, right? So everybody got 60 seconds to drop their little links, their IGs, they whatever, to get their last minute networking on. And we're going to be out of here. Everybody will get an email probably tomorrow morning, noon-ish. It all depends on what the vibe is when I wake up. But it will have a nice little recap of what we talked about. You will have a link to be able to replay this. We will send all of the links. So the Substack link, the consultation link for the attorney, the consultation link for myself, everything that we talked about pretty much is going to be in that recap. Again, we'll give you a recap email. We'll give you the video itself. And then again, if you guys want to keep growing and growing, reach out to us. We'll help as much as possible. This is pretty much our this is what we do for a living, you guys. We help you all understand how to be doper artists like you already are. So again, I appreciate y'all coming through. Appreciate y'all staying through. Appreciate y'all absorbing the energy. Hopefully we see y'all on the next one. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace, love, and safety to everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.